Is a Stanley Cup three-peat in the cards for the Cardiac Cats? Let's talk about their top 5 fantasy targets on the latest edition of your daily source for fantasy hockey.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, my fantasy fanatics? Welcome back inside the On the Road Lab to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day, even throughout these dog days of the summer off season. We see you, we appreciate you, and we thank you so much for tuning in to the Saturday special edition. It's the Stanley Cup champion Steel back-to-back. Can they run it back a third time? We'll talk about it. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Steel, is a three-peat in the cards? Because this team, I can say with assurance, is one of another fantasy goldmine type clubs that I just want to keep going back to the well. Paul Maurice, Zito in the front office. It's elite, baby, and they're on the cusp of a dynasty.
They are a dynasty. They've been to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals now. They are right there in that conversation, and there is a possibility they go to a 4th straight Stanley Cup finals with the potential of the three-peat. This team is so good all around. When you look at the coaching, the general management, the front office, the superstar players, the goaltending, the back end this team has as well. Every position you look at, they are sound and set and ready to rumble and take on any opponent they face going into the postseason. So This team is absolutely electric. You can look up and down their lineup to a lot of players, Seth Jones, Gustav Forsling, who have a ton of fantasy value.
Yes.
We've talked about Luosterainen, and we've talked about Lundell, them still having that bottom 6 value as well for your fantasy hockey team. But at number 5, I went with Sergei Bobrovsky, and I could see why he'd be maybe a little bit higher on your list or other people's list. I went with Sergei Bobrovsky at number 5 just because he's getting up there in age. He is going to be 37 years old, but he's still bringing the absolute lights out on a nightly basis. 4 straight seasons now of 50-plus starts in the league. 3 out of the 4 last season, he had 33-plus wins. He was 33, 19, and 2 this last year with a .905 save percentage and a 2.44 goals against average. When you look at Bobrovsky, he's not just back, he's stabilized. He's very, very well sound off. Sometimes he does get caught, swimming a little bit in the blue paint. He gets a little bit out of position, but that's also one of his benefits and his advantages of how lateral he is and being able to make those key saves in the moment. He is the number 1 guy. After sending and trading Spencer Knight to the Chicago Blackhawks, they've kind of been rocking with some of these lower tier backup goaltenders, Vitek Vanacek, who really didn't see any time. They acquire Daniil Tarasov as well this offseason. Right. I don't really see him getting more than 25 or even 30 games starts this season. So when I look at Sergei Bobrovsky, he's an all-around stud. You want wins. You want him on your team. The save percentage, it might fluctuate, which we have seen over the last 3 years. It's gone from a .901 save percentage up to a .915, back to a .905. More than fine with that because he's providing wins. He provides shutouts, and he provides, again, a pretty good save percentage from time to time.
I think the conversation around goaltenders these days, especially after this previous season, in terms of fantasy at least, is pretty clear-cut that we're comfortable with Connor Hellebuyck at 1, and then some sort of combination of Jake Ottinger, Vasilevsky, and Igor Shesterkin as kind of like the top 4, and, you could maybe push those previous 3 around a little bit. But for me, then it's got to be Bob. And to me, then that makes him higher up on this list. I got to throw the caveat out of you and I look at these lists a little bit differently. I put more emphasis on goaltenders. This one also would depend on your format. Sergei Bobrovsky is higher up on my list. And I did just want to throw out this caveat because you mentioned the age of Sergei Bobrovsky. That's something to consider for sure. However, what you also need to consider is how durable this veteran goaltender has been basically for the better part of the past decade. And you add in all of the postseason action on the body, it's just downright impressive. Is it something you want to consider? For sure, and I appreciate you bringing it up. What I would also bring up before I get to my number 5 player steal is, you mentioned all these other players. I also have Brad Marchand as honorable mention on my list. I think that there is going to be something to be said about all the mileage also on some of these other players. Injury concerns the whole career of Sam Bennett's over the past few seasons. He comes in at 5 on my list. But when you look at all the success of this team, Steele, and how ruggedly they play, the impact has been clear on Matthew Tkachuk, and we'll get there and talk about his injuries. But that's something to remember, that with success comes mileage on that body. Sam Bennett, though, what a beauty, what a fantasy darling. And my concern with Sam Bennett and why he's not higher on this list, and I'm totally fine if he's higher on yours, is just looking at the track record in his career with the offensive output. And I know he popped 28 goals a couple of years ago. I just see him kind of peaking in that postseason, and I don't want to reach on a guy that has overly influenced my decision-making by an amazing postseason. Is he valuable? Yes. Does he come with the PIMs and the peripherals, and then he still chips in with the offense? Of course. And I'm okay if he's higher on your list. Very valuable player. He comes in at 5, and Bob a little higher, just because of how I place emphasis on goaltenders, because I've been burned way too many times, Steele.
You and I both. He is a little higher on my list, and I'll explain why later in this episode. But at number 4 for me, I went with Carter Verhaeghe, your boy, Niagara Ice Dog, getting after it on a nightly basis as well. And you could see that this was clearly a down year from this offensive-minded forward. 53 points in 81 games compared to the last 2 years where he put up 70-plus points with 30-plus goals in both those years as well. This guy is a sneaky 30-plus goal scorer. We've seen it multiple times now from this player. He has that potential. If he's on your if he is in the mid-round gold mine, that's where you want to take this guy. He benefits from the top-line deployment with Barkov, with Reinhart, even with Bennett, now with Marchand in the mix. He plays fast. He has a high shot volume as well. That's 3 straight seasons now of 240-plus shots. You could see that when the game wasn't going exactly the way he liked it or planned, you could see him start to factor in other ways around the ice. His physical game jumped up from 63 hits closer to 100 this last year. But you can see the clear difference in his giveaway to takeaway ratio and how this season kind of affected him. He's always been a very good puck handler, knows how to control the puck, where to put the puck, making good decisions in the defensive zone. For the most part, he's always had a relatively really good ratio between giveaways to takeaways. This last year, his giveaway to takeaway ratio was brutal. It was almost 3-1. He had 81 giveaways and 23 giveaways. 81 giveaways and 23 takeaways. So you could see that there was something clearly, kind of factoring into his decision making. It dropped from 72 points to 53 points. Yep. 81 games played. He's been very durable over the last 4 seasons as well. I still think when you look at this guy and where he finished on the Yahoo rankings, his pre-rank before the season started, he was 55th in the league. He finished 74th. I think by all means, you should be able to draft this guy in the 6th or 7th round. If you can get him later than that, I think it's a steal.
I totally agree. My bad if there's any background noise here. We got a little bit of construction going on at my parents' house in the city. However, when I looked at this club, Steele, and you make a really interesting point here with Verhaeghe, and perhaps that's a bit of a confidence thing that affected the rest of his offensive ability. This Florida team usually is like the prototypical club that wins so many puck battles. They're tough on the forecheck, really solid all-around team, and you know that comes right from their bench boss and Paul Maurice. So some of those underlying metrics, when I look at a guy like Verhaeghe, one, it doesn't make sense considering how good this team is. Maybe that's exactly what was playing into his confidence a little bit, a lack of a two-way game, 200-foot game, if you will. he would probably be, he doesn't make my top 5 steal. He would have been 5A, 5B for me, because I don't feel like honorable mention is fair when you brought up the point that hits home the most with this guy. 30 plus goal scoring potential. He's fantasy relevant in a very big way and still so very draftable. And you know how hard that is for honorable mention for me. So I'm going to slide him at 5B with Bennett. I got Barkov at number 4, but I'll talk about it right after the break and explain why. There's some injury angles here to consider, Steele, and that might play into how this shuffles out. However, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. If you ever wish managing your money felt easier, with Monarch Money, it is. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat, like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, way more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, start building that wealth. You know you can be saving extra cash each month, and Monarch Money has been helping us do that right here on this show. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. I do just want to preface this that Matthew Tkachuk is not on my top 5 list.
Okay.
I know you and I discussed about this.
That's making sense now, how your list is shaking out. So
yeah, it's making sense now. Matthew Tkachuk is not on this list because he will be out of the lineup at least until the Christmas break, probably even after that. So you have to take his value and his fantasy stock with a little, with a grain of salt because of him being out for the first 2.5, 3 months of the season. That's going to be a huge factor where he gets drafted and how late he falls down the draft board as well. At number 3 on my list, I went with Aleksander Barkov. This guy has 80+ point potential every single season, even with the countless injuries that this guy has throughout his year.
Just it.
He has only played a full 82-game regular season once in his entire 12-year career in the National Hockey League. That is outstanding to me. It's almost unfathomable. This guy lives to play games between 65 and 71. He misses at least 10 games every single year. However, there's still so much value to be had. I had to put him at number 3. 71 points last year. He's been a point per game player the last 4 or 5 seasons. He's done it more than that throughout his tenure in the National Hockey League. 87 hits, 54 blocks, 149 shots. That's down. I expect that to get back up once again. He's probably he is the best two-way forward in the game. 3 Selke trophies. He's in the conversation year after year in Selke, Lady Byng, King Clancy, all-star recognition as well. His rookie or Calder consideration as well. When you look at Aleksander Barkov and what he provides every single year to this team in the face-off circle as well, 800+ face-off guy. He's a cheat code in the circle. Again, potential 80+ points on a yearly basis. He's been a point per game player. He raises the level of everyone around him. And
well said.
After that trade with Calgary, where they sent Jonathan Huberdeau away, you didn't really quite know what was going to happen, how it was going to affect their game. It hasn't affected whatsoever. He's just that level of player that he affects everybody around him, not people affecting him. So he's just continuing to stride and do great things. Again, 3 straight Stanley Cup finals for the Florida Panthers now. Could be a 4th. Hopefully not. Hopefully our buds get in there. But Aleksander Barkov, preseason ranked 33rd. He finished 92nd. Again, that has to do with the 12, 13 games he missed. If he can play at least up to 72, 75 games, I think this guy is a fifth round draft pick. I wouldn't reach too early on him because of the injuries.
It's the perfect guy to explain how good he is on the ice and how important he is to them winning games. And sometimes you have to separate what you're going to get fantasy-wise just in terms of that injury risk. However, 3 Selke trophies out of the last 5 seasons, Steele, and just how good he is at shutting down the opposition's best guys. And I know that's not a fantasy angle. That plays into you winning and losing weeks. However, 88 points 4 seasons ago in 67 games, followed up with 78, 80, and 71, and none of those even crossed the 74 games played mark. The upside for the points that you mentioned are there and make him very attractive. He comes in at 4, though, for that injury risk. And for the sake of my list, I did still put Matthew Tkachuk at 2. But thank you for explaining that unless you have a league that have multiple IR spots and the format is right for you, I say you don't touch Matthew Tkachuk at all unless perhaps you have a booming team, Steele, and you want to take a flyer at the end of the draft because no one has touched him and you're very happy with your forward group. Maybe you stash him in the IR and hope he comes back on the earlier side. But from what I read this morning, and I think you read the same, a torn labrum right off the bone, that sounds painful and sounds like it's going to take some time. So anyway, Barkov with the injury risk comes in at 4. And what I'm going to say is, and I don't even need to make this point anymore because you and I have spoken about how good Sergei Bobrovsky is. And actually, we have talked more about this Florida Panthers team than any other club over the last 2 seasons. So the angles have been covered. They're damn good. So all we got to say is Barkov at 4. And for me, let me show Bob a little bit more flowers because he not only gets it done in the regular season, when you see this man's numbers in the playoffs, this is just seriously impressive stuff. Over the course of his career, Steele, he has just under a 910 postseason save percentage, multiple shutouts, and this guy is cooking. Absolutely cooking with 111 games played and a 61 win mark. So flowers due to Bob. I mentioned him coming in at around that 5 mark in terms of goalies off the board. So in most standard leagues, this guy is so valuable. I still have hanging on to him in my keeper dynasty league. So perhaps this is influencing where I have him on my list. We can move on to another player. We can go to break because the end point of this club is they are still going to need to bring it. We just spoke about this on yesterday's episode. The other teams in the East and in the Atlantic are taking notes. I would say also that move by the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Dakota Joshua move, it might not jump off the page fantasy, but to me, that's Treliving looking, we got to go through this Florida Panthers team at some point. You're going to want some Dakota Joshuas to go to war with because when push comes to shove, this Florida Panthers team, they're going to bring it.
And I don't expect Treliving to be done whatsoever. We've already heard the rumors about they're going to make a big difference on the trade market rather than the free agent signings this offseason. Just to go back to Matthew Tkachuk and where to expect him to go, I still think he's a draftable player. I would not let this guy get into the waiver wire situation. If somehow in your league he does end up on the waiver wire, I would pick him up immediately and throw him on the IR. I would feel more than comfortable. Again, this is a guy that even if he's going to miss the first 2.5 months and he comes back and only plays, let's say, between 45, 50 games, somewhere around there potentially, I still believe that this guy is going to be a huge factor down the road, especially going into the playoffs of your fantasy hockey league. I don't know where you would feel comfortable, but I would feel comfortable drafting Matthew Tkachuk on my team. I mean, honestly, as early as the 12th round, 11th round, maybe that's a little high because of him missing the season, the beginning of the season like that. But coming down the stretch in your fantasy hockey leagues, he is going to be a major factor. And on top of that, you can still get into after the draft. You can still start trading players, trading picks if you're in a keeper league, adjusting your team to kind of fit what you want to, what you envisioned your team to look like. Matthew Tkachuk for me is still draftable. It would be after the 10th round just because of the injury concern, but somewhere from the 12th to 15th is where I would take him. Any longer than that, he's getting on my team right away. When we come back after the break, let's talk about the top 2 fantasy hockey targets from the Florida Panthers. We'll continue to break down every single team remaining in the National Hockey League in the top 5 targets. I believe the next team on the list are the Carolina Hurricanes, so stay tuned for that episode on Monday. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like playoff hockey, the energy, the rivals. We know there's not going on anymore, but Game Time gives you the last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket prices often drop closer. You get to puck drop so you can score big without overpaying. Plus, all those events you want to go to, concerts, comedy sections, anything you want, Game Time has it for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Thank you for tuning in for this Saturday special where we break down the Florida Panthers top 5 targets. Hit the subscribe button, follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip over to you, my friend. Number 2 on your list for the Florida Panthers.
I was just going to make the point about Matthew Tkachuk very quickly, and he did come in at number 2 on my list of ideal candidates. If he is going to be out that long, my only concern about how you were saying to draft him and still don't leave him, I totally agree, is there is still going to probably be some developments in terms of what his injury actually looks like before draft season happens. So I would implore you to stay on top of any alerts around Matthew Tkachuk, because let's say off-season recovery is, you'll hear rumblings going well or not well. That would influence where he drops, because let's say things are going well, Steele, I agree with you even more so than do not sleep, because if this guy is the horse he is and even comes back a little early and we let him sit, that would be a mistake. So keep your finger on the pulse. A good way to do that, keep it tapped to the pod. I would then have just shifted my list down, Steele. It would have been Verhaeghe at 5, Bennett at 4, Barkov 3, Bob at 2. But the guy at the top of the list, and that's where I want to get to, if you're okay, who did you have at 2? That's my bad.
At number 2, I had Sam Bennett, and it might be a little high, but look, this to me is an absolute dog. He is a fantasy hockey pit bull. He scores, he hits, he's in the middle of every single scum. And Bennett's value isn't always in points; it's in the grind. Like I just said, hits, shots, that playoff style grit. If he stays healthy, a 50-point season, 170 hit season is absolutely in the cards. He plays angry. Your fantasy team reaps the rewards of how he plays his game. Grab him in those multi-cat formats. And yeah, maybe I'm reaching a little bit on Sam Bennett, but that's what I love about these formats and these type of players who fill out those peripherals. 145 hits, 45 blocks, 241 shots, 90 penalty minutes. Love the banger league category. He had a career year, 51 points in 76 games. And look, he's also in that same boat as Aleksander Barkov. He's only played one full 82-game regular season throughout the 11 years in the National Hockey League. He always kind of finishes the season somewhere between 65 and 73 games played on average. So there are some injury concerns with this player.
Yep.
I just like the way he plays the game. And that's the type of player I want on my team who's going to help me to win the Fantasy Hockey League championship. So maybe I am reaching on this guy a little bit. You probably could put Barkov in front of him. You probably could put Bobrovsky ahead of him as well. But I just love these guys who fill out the peripherals. Even if he's going to miss, 5-10 games in a season, I'm okay with it for what he brings when he is in the lineup. He finished 35th in Yahoo rankings at the end of the regular season.
It's impressive.
I think this is a guy that you can probably get in the same round as Aleksander Barkov, somewhere in that 5th round.
I don't know how many people were going to agree with you in terms of Bennett over Barkov in drafts. So I'm going to disagree there, but I'm not going to disagree with if he can somehow translate how good he was offensively, Steele, in the postseason to next year at the start, you're going to be looking like you're spot on with this one. Right now, for me, it's a little bit of a stretch, but what's not is how good Sam Reinhart has been over the last couple of seasons. And, he toiled away in Buffalo there. He was still a valuable fantasy piece then, 50 to 60 to 65 points one season, 25 goals, right around that mark. And since coming to Florida, he has just reaped the benefits of everything that we have just discussed. Solid goaltending, balanced, big bruising back end, lots of B's in there, a great bottom six that props up the top six's ability. In Buffalo, you had none of that. So the fact that he was still getting it done in Buffalo to a certain extent and now comes into Florida and puts up repeated great seasons. Steele, this man has 127 goals since 2023. He has led the league in power play goals or been at the top since those numbers that I just put down. He had a performance for the ages clinching that cup. What do you have, 4 goals? This is legendary stuff. But all of the noise aside, he is one of the best shooters in the NHL. He has proven he can bring 35 plus goals with ease, perhaps more. And this guy comes in at number 1, Tkachuk regardless, because also, and I know you're going to bring this up, the peripherals are coming pretty decently too. I'll leave that angle to you. But this guy, he can shoot. He brings the peripherals. And my goodness me, with that money in the bag now and this team still looking like they're going to run it back, Sam Reinhart is a very sexy fantasy target.
Look, he's been Florida's nuclear option the last 2-3 seasons. The power play goals, 30 power play points this last year, 34 the season before that. He is the bumper god on the Panthers power play one. His IQ, his positioning makes him lethal without even needing that elite speed. He's not only just a sniper, he's efficient, he's surgical, he's built for those high danger finishes in tight in the blue paint. He's quick with those releases. He knows how to pick those corners. The accuracy on this guy is insane. Don't overthink this. Reinhart is a top 25 fantasy asset in all formats, period.
Yes,
he's a goal scorer. He's a playmaker. The physical aspect of the game's getting up there as well. 200 plus shots for the last 3 seasons now. Over 20 minutes of average ice time the last 2 seasons. He's 29, 30 years old. This team is, again, this team going in next season, they're the top dog for a reason. 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, back-to-back Stanley Cup wins for this Florida team. I would draft Sam Reinhart in that late 2nd round, early 3rd round, especially if you're in a 16-team league. 16-team league, he's getting drafted in the 2nd round. You're getting somewhere in between that. Again,
Most
Matthew
definitely.
Tkachuk being out of the lineup, if he was healthy, he would probably be in the top 2, at least the top 3. But Sam Reinhart comes at number 1 for us.
Very much so, Steele. He falls into right in the category of, like, in terms of value in standard leagues, Sam Reinhart, Willie Nylander, Sidney Crosby. That's right at the back, 2nd round, middle of the 2nd round, back end of the 2nd round, depending on formats, a little higher, Steele. Like you just said, if it's a 16-team league, he might be beginning of the 2nd round, and I'd be totally fine with that. He can put the puck in the net. And when you see the peripherals still there pretty solid, even if you are in a banger league, he should stay right there for the most part. This team is going to be very close to running it back, and I can't wait to see what they do come September.
I'm so pumped for hockey to get back on. It's already been too long without it. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night, Locked On NHL podcast as well. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your bets this summer season, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.